reportedly causing $5,000 in damage. Fortunately, Kelvin caused no serious harm or injury to anyone at the site, but it was clear at this point that Kelvin's radical online dialogue was now manifesting into real-world action, and he needed to be stopped.
Hey yo gang, what's happening? It's your boy Araine TJ back again with another reaction video, and today I'm not actively drawing for you if I'm not actively doing something art related for you. I'm gonna be doing something art related behind the scenes. You feel me? Like I can't stop. There's too much to do for me to stop. So yeah, I got some stuff going on, and I feel like that's gonna be the move from now on. If I'm not actively drawing, I'm designing
4chan has been host to many criminals throughout the year.
But today we going over this. You know what I mean? The title done tell you right here. Make sure you subscribe to my guy, Wavy Web Surf, right? Dangerous 4chan trolls that my guy that are in prison right now. Are you gonna jump up and block me like that, man? What you doing? You guys know Jax?
From animal abusers to vandals, hell, even bank robbers have shared details of their criminal activities to the notorious website. While 4chan is generally an anything-goes kind of place, thankfully, when it comes to criminality, fellow board members will often report these braggadocious lawbreakers in an attempt to get them arrested. And many of these arrests, especially those stemming from more heinous crimes, have resulted in lengthy prison sentences, with some of 4chan's most infamous criminals currently serving time as I'm recording this video. From an extremist 4chaner caught trying to sabotage a power plant, to a heartless murderer posting photos of his victims to the boards, to a deranged 4chan teen murdering his samurai sword, these are the 4chan users in prison right now.
bro, they crazy, bro.
I'd like to thank Displate for sponsoring today's video. They make these badass metal posters that you see behind me here. Displate has both branded and artistic styles that you can pick from. They've got over 1 million designs of 29% off one displate, 35% off for 2 to 4 displays, or
if you need a display, you could go ahead and check them out. But since it's a reaction to a reaction, we ain't gotta do all this.
40% off for 5 or more.
Yo, bro, that's not edible. Of course you wanna knock it off.
4chan is no stranger to extremists. After all, much of the site's notorious reputation developed over the last decade has come from lone wolf radicals taking to its boards to announce their plans of violence. Though few of these would-be terrorists were as vocal as the moleman, an individual that plotted to blow up a fucking power plant. This bizarre 4chan tale begins with 26-year-old Alberta, Canada man Kelvin Gregory Maurer. Not much is known about Kelvin's early life. He is one of 3 sons and was raised in Stony Plain, Alberta. What we do know is that Kelvin dropped out of school in the 9th grade, and around the time of him leaving formal education was when his near-decade-long downward spiral into extremism began. This spiral beginning with an unhealthy addiction to the 4chan message boards. As a teenager and young adult, Kelvin frequented 4chan, acting as an edgy troll of sorts under a self-created pseudonym, calling himself the Moleman. Moleman was a firearms enthusiast and regularly showed off his arsenal to other board members. He also had an obsession with off-the-grid living, and very much on brand with his 4chan alias, he had a fascination with subterranean bunkers, even going as far as digging some bug-out bunkers of his own, sharing photos of his work with others on 4chan who were convinced of a near-future doomsday scenario. Kelvin, as Moleman, made many friends while browsing 4chan and even met some of these individuals IRL, with this motley crew of Anons going out into the wilderness together for camping trips and to shoot guns. Over time, the young 4chaners' activity went from peculiar to possibly even illegal, with Kelvin allegedly acquiring several prohibited weapons, including a fully automatic AK-47 and explosive devices. His posts would grow more radical around this time as well, with the Moleman sharing radical right-wing and anti-government political views. These posts being somewhat concerning given the context of his firearms obsession. And eventually the Moleman's 4chan activity would catch the attention of the feds, and Let's face it, guys, the feds are all over 4chan, and they were keeping an eye on old Kelvin. So just keep that in the back of your mind, okay? While under FBI surveillance, Kelvin would make many posts of concern to 4chan. In 2018, moleman reportedly claimed that he knew how to manufacture a chemical that was used in explosives known as TATP. Bombs of this sort were used to perpetrate the deadly 2005 London bombings coordinated by jihadi terrorists. And while I'm not exactly sure how he came to this conclusion, in late 2020, the moleman began to suspect, rightly so, that he was being surveilled by the federal government. And he stopped making posts of 4chan under this alias and just continued posting there under different anonymous accounts. And needless to say, his bizarre antics and posts would continue. On January 7th of 2021, Kelvin would post to 4chan about wanting to attack a power generating station. This power plant in particular being a TransAlta Keep Hills gas power station. And while Kelvin would go on to do this, even sharing photos of himself performing reconnaissance on the power station while equipped with an AK rifle. The poster alleged to be Kelvin says, quote, "This is too easy. Someone asked me if I work here. I just said yep, and they were like, all right." Kelvin's AK imagery was accompanied by a diagram showcasing where he planned to place timed thermite charges with the goal of bringing down the plant's transmission tower. So you got a guy that's armed, taking photos of himself, allegedly infiltrating power stations, critical parts of, societal infrastructure here. Highly illegal, okay? And Kelvin wasn't just blowing hot air and just posting these photos for clout. The guy actually would attempt to raid a power plant and cause damage. In February of 2021, Kelvin would drive to the Obsidian Energy power plant near Spruce Grove. And while there, he allegedly vandalized a large propane tank and a storage shed on the property, reportedly causing $5,000 in damage. Fortunately, Kelvin caused no serious harm or injury to anyone at the site, but it was clear at this point that Kelvin's radical online dialogue was now manifesting into real-world action, and he needed to be stopped. The feds were moving in. Not long after his alleged power plant invasion, around midnight of February 13th of 2021, Kelvin Moleman Maurer was arrested at his father's Parkland County residence by a cavalry of heavily armed police, these officers being accompanied by an explosives removal team. As Kelvin the Moleman was being arrested and cops prepared for a meticulous search of the property, he teased the search crew with the following comment: "What tipped you off? You guys are gonna love this. You'll see." Him sort of teasing them that they were about to find some crazy shit in his dad's house. The search of Kelvin's residence would take multiple days, and the police would turn up an arsenal of various forms of weapons, including fully automatic AK-47s, tons of magazines, TATP explosive chemicals, as well as a variety of fuses that could be used to make bombs. And they also found a tan-colored shirt with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police patch, which seemed to indicate that Kelvin had been possibly trying to impersonate police in his spare time. Quote, "Just because someone looks like a police officer doesn't mean they are one." And it wasn't just weapons that they found on the property, they also found the bug-out bunker. While searching the land, officers discovered a bunker that Kelvin had dug up on his father's property. And they needed to search it, and initially they were all like, nah, fuck no, we're not going down there, it's probably booby-trapped, but thankfully it wasn't, and eventually it was searched, and I don't think anything of real interest was found. So naturally, Kelvin was arrested, and he was facing a litany of charges ranging from illegal firearm possession to vandalism, attacking a fucking power plant. In January of 2023, Kelvin was found guilty to 8 of the 34 charges that had been filed against him. These charges most notably relating to possessing restricted firearms, such as the fully automatic AK-47 and AK-74 assault rifles in his possession. He was ultimately sentenced to serve 6 years in prison and is behind bars currently. As a part of his sentencing, he'll be banned from possessing any sort of weapon or explosives for the rest of his life. A psychology report performed by Kelvin's defense team during his trial revealed that the man was in an insecure position at the time that he adopted the moleman persona and was plagued by thoughts of worthlessness, hopelessness, and felt that he was a failure. It seemed like his moleman activity was a cry for help or a way to find purpose. An extremely self-destructive way to do so, to say the least. In the time since committing his crime, Kelvin would become a father and has been outspokenly remorseful regarding his actions. Quote, "I wish it never came to this for me to change. The hardest thing about all of this is losing my daughter. I'm ready to accept all the consequences of my actions." Hopefully, Kelvin can truly reform himself and live a normal life once he finishes his time behind bars. This next story is a bizarre case involving a 4chan user becoming so desensitized by extreme content that they saw on 4chan, they ended up killing their own stepmother.
That's crazy.
It's the grisly case of Reuben Brathe.
That's
This
crazy,
is Reuben's
gang.
54-year-old stepmother, Fiona Scourfield.
Poor
Fiona was said to have been a joyful and selfless woman,
She
a
looked it.
passionate lover of animals. This charitable woman dedicated much of her free time to rescuing and caring for dogs and other unhomed household pets. At the peak of her selfless animal-saving endeavors in 2018, Fiona was said to have had 32 animals under her care. Also under her care was her teenage stepson, Reuben. Reuben began living with his stepmother in June of 2013 after his relationship with his birth mother deteriorated. According to Reuben's own words, he loved his stepmother and even helped take care of the animals at times, with him going out on the ranch and caring for the dogs and other various creatures that she housed. Fiona supported her stepson in any way that she could, encouraging him to follow his dreams of going to college in the future. However, sadly, Reuben's life and aspirations would take a dark path in his late teenage years. Around the age of 17, Reuben would begin spending an increasing amount of time online and started taking a disturbing interest in watching incredibly violent videos on the internet. He first became exposed to these types of videos on 4chan, as users would often share around gore videos and links to access them on the site. Some of the videos that Reuben would find on 4chan included recordings of mass shootings, cartel beheadings, stuff like that. As Reuben increased his consumption of this—
Speaking of which, gang, I be watching a lot of these true crime stuff, right? And I saw something online the other day where like some psychiatrist or whatever was saying a lot of people are like starting to engage with this kind of content, and it's actually like triggering. It's a bad sign, essentially. Like, if you like that kind of stuff, it's like, you know, internally you want to do or fulfill that kind of stuff. That's what some psychiatrists were saying.
This grisly shock content, his mental state would deteriorate further, and the once lively and helpful young man would become apathetic and detached from his family. A profound state of depression would soon follow, and as Reuben neared high school graduation, the young man found himself in a hopeless and desensitized state. He even at one point contemplated taking his own life to get out of his miserable mental circumstance, but Brathwaite was too scared to take his own life. He felt completely trapped. But then he had an idea. No longer getting the depraved dopamine hits from watching online shock content, Reuben decides that perhaps if he was to create a gory scene of his own, that it would be enough to bring him out of his depression. He thought that perhaps if he killed his own stepmother, that it would give him the rush that he needed, and that he could escape his family and start his life anew. Life would be worth living for him once again. This was the thought process of the depraved teenager. And with that being said, he would soon initiate a sinister murder plot that targeted his once beloved stepmother. On March 6, 2018, Reuben would come home from school. Nothing about him seemed off. He had a cup of tea with his stepmom and her mother, who was visiting for a brief period of time. After finishing tea, he went outside and tended to the chickens and other farm animals under the family's care. And later in the evening, after his stepmom's visitor had left, the woman began to settle in for the night. And it was at this time where he would enact his murderous plan. Reuben would procure a samurai sword from under his bed, as well as an axe that he got from an outdoor shed. Once he was fully armed, he initiated a ploy to get his mother to come outside. What he did was tell her that he had found an injured cat and needed her to come check it out. When the unsuspecting woman finally came outside, Reuben proceeded to violently attack her, hitting her in the head with the blunt side of his axe, causing her to fall to the ground seemingly unconscious. As she laid there completely defenseless, Reuben would continue his assault, hitting her in the head with the object several more times, and he eventually finished his stepmother off by slitting her throat with his samurai sword. Reuben would then take photos of his victim and attempt to upload them to the internet. However, apparently he didn't have service at the time and the upload was unsuccessful. And at this point, he would call police and coldly admit to his murder and tell them that he was the one responsible. Quote, "I told Fiona that the cat was outside and it was injured. When she stepped outside the door, I hit her with the axe. There was a crack of the bone and blood was coming out. I could see her brain. I used the samurai sword to slice her neck. When police arrived, he would elaborate to them why he murdered his stepmom. Quote, "I wanted to kill her without distress. I wanted her dead so that I could have a life. But I didn't want to kill her in any psychotic way." He also told police that he hit her with the axe so that she would be unconscious before slitting her throat, because he felt it would cause less distress.
What?
And with these statements that Reuben is giving to police and the
Hold on, gang. I gotta bring that back. I'm sorry, I was talking to my brother. He's down in there right now in Saudi, that side of the world. He's freaking out. He dropped a ball in the weights. You know the weights that you be putting on your bar? I got some weights stacked up. He dropped a ball or something in the hole in the center of the weights. And now he's freaking out trying to get it out. But anyways, let me bring this back. I was a little sidetracked.
It's 22.
Murdered his stepmom. Quote, "I wanted to kill her without..." And at this point, he would call police and coldly admit to his murder and tell them that he was the one responsible. Quote, "I told Fiona that the cat was outside and it was injured. When she stepped outside the door, I hit her with the axe. There was a crack of the bone and blood was coming out. I could see her brain. I used the samurai sword to slice her neck. When police arrived, he would elaborate to them why he murdered his stepmom. Quote, "I wanted to kill her without distress. I wanted her dead so that I could have a life. But I didn't want to kill her in any psychotic way." He also told police that he hit her with the axe so that she would be unconscious before slitting her throat, because he felt it would cause less distress. And with these statements that Reuben is giving to police and the courts, it becomes clear how desensitized he truly had become to this sort of violent gore content that he was watching on 4chan. He was able to calmly talk about this stuff like he was just discussing the weather with somebody. Reuben would later be administered a mental health evaluation, and surprisingly, the results of this test indicated that he wasn't suffering from any acute mental illness at the time of the crime's committal. As a result of the brutal murder of his stepmother, Reuben Brathe was given a life sentence. He'll have a chance to make parole after serving 15 years in custody.
What? Oh. Anyways,
this story is an unsettling murder case involving 4chan, where it's thought that a killer posted the coordinates of his victim's body to the boards. In 2007, 18-year-old Emily Sander was working as a secretary as well as an internet porn model who went by the pseudonym Zoe Zane. She had been recruited into the porn industry shortly after her 18th birthday and was keeping the occupation mostly a secret except for those in her close inner circle. The woman was said to have had somewhat of a large online following, relatively speaking, for like 2007 internet porn, I guess. But this woman's adult film career and life in general would sadly be cut short. On November 23rd of 2007, Emily Sander would be seen leaving a bar in El Dorado, Kansas with a 24-year-old man named Israel Miralis. And this bar would be the last place that Emily Sander was ever seen alive. Emily would be reported missing, and once it was discovered that the last person she was with was Israel Miralis, police began investigating where this guy was, and it turns out that he had actually rented a hotel room next to the bar that they were last seen at. And when police went to search this room, they found traces of blood, but Miralis nor was Emily Sander found. And after the hotel discovery, there really weren't any additional leads in this case. That was seemingly until a post was published to 4chan. On November 9th of 2007, an anonymous thread on 4chan was posted, attached with a picture of Emily Sander. The post read, "If anyone can guess their own post number, I will tell you where she is buried." A few minutes later, someone replied to this thread and was actually able to correctly guess their own post number. And well, the OP delivered. Seeing that someone got their post number correct, the OP says, quote, "WinRAR, here you go," and they attached a set of coordinates. These coordinates marked the spot on a map about 50 miles east of El Dorado in a rural area, those coordinates being 37.76 north and 96.21 west.
That's
and on
crazy.
the same day at 2:20 p.m., police would discover the body of Emily Sander, approximately 50 miles east of El Dorado, at the pretty much exact location that this 4chan poster had indicated. An autopsy report indicated that Emily had been stabbed multiple times and was strangled with a telephone cord. But investigators would refuse to give additional details about how they found the body. But naturally, it's been speculated that this 4chan post was how they found it. Which of course begs the question, how did this anonymous 4chan user know the location of Emily's body? Could it have been possible that this 4chan poster was Israel himself, the killer posting to 4chan? Admittedly, on the surface, it appears that this is the case, but some have disputed the claim. There are a few ways to rationalize it not being Israel. It's possible that the 4chan post was authored by an accomplice or confidant of the killer. Keep in mind though, in follow-up investigations of the Emily Sander case, it's been confirmed by police that Israel worked alone when he committed his murder. Others suggest that the archived screenshot of the infamous Emily Sander coordinate post on 4chan is misleading. You see that the 4chan post is timestamped just after 1 o'clock in the morning, and Emily's body was found 13 hours later at 2:20 p.m. So it appears the 4chan post came before the police body discovery, suggesting that the 4chan post was the reason that the cops found the body. But the thing about this 4chan screenshot archive of the coordinates post is that we don't actually know the local time zone of the person that took this image. So it's actually possible that it was posted after the 2:20 p.m. Central Standard Time discovery of Emily Sander's body. And if that is the case, this post is not the smoking gun that people think it is, and it's literally just somebody trolling. And I'm just gonna kind of ramble here for a moment, but it is rather unusual, like even if the 4chan post came after the real-time discovery of Emily's body, for somebody to just have such detailed information regarding the coordinates of the body's location. The actual discovery of Emily Sander's body wasn't being reported by the media until much later in that evening, so this wouldn't be like something that the average person knew about. The discovery of the body was only public knowledge until later in the night. So even if this person posted something like an hour after she was discovered, it's still really bizarre that they would know the coordinates and general location of where she was at. While it's never officially been confirmed that this post was authored by Israel, I feel like the obvious answer is the most likely in this case. Israel Miralles would be apprehended almost a month later on December 19th of 2007 in Santa Rosa de Muquez, Mexico. He was charged in the United States with capital murder, rape, and aggravated sodomy. However, there were some complications with his extradition due to him being a Mexican citizen. Miralles had an interesting defense while on trial. His defense would claim that Emily was murdered by somebody else and that he was simply the person that discovered her body. And he fled the country out of fear of being wrongly prosecuted. Needless to say, nobody was buying this. Miralles would be convicted of rape and capital murder, and on March 31st of 2010, he was sentenced to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole. While it's never been officially confirmed that Miralles was the poster behind the 4chan coordinates, it certainly seems possible that he was the one behind it.
Interesting.
Sadly, 4chan has been frequented by a handful of mass killers over the years, with some of these notorious mass murderers sharing their radical beliefs and ideals to 4chan prior to initiating their attacks. In this segment, I'll be covering some mass killers that have connections to 4chan. First is the harrowing case of Brenton Tarrant. Tarrant is the man responsible for the March 15, 2019 mosque shootings that took place in Christchurch, New Zealand. This man's hate-fueled terrorist attack involving an armed assault on 2 Islamic mosques took the lives of 51 people and injured 40 more. The disturbed shooter live-streamed his first mosque killing to Facebook and perpetrated his second vicious attack while mosque members were in prayer. Brenton was on his way to attack a third mosque when he would thankfully be stopped by police and arrested. Tarrant was jailed and faced 51 counts of murder and 40 counts of attempted murder and 1 terrorism-related charge. In March of 2020, Tarrant pled guilty and was later sentenced to serve life in prison without any chance of parole. Brenton Tarrant's mosque shootings were the deadliest shootings to ever occur in New Zealand history, and in the wake of this tragedy, many were left asking the question, why would this man do this? This is a complicated question to answer, but some of Tarrant's twisted motivations for committing his attacks can be found in online posts that he made prior to launching his assault. Tarrant's attacks were undoubtedly motivated by his hatred of minority groups and believers of non-Christian religions, specifically Muslims. Sometime before his attacks, Tarrant was said to have authored a 74-page discriminatory manifesto titled The Great Replacement. This writing likely inspired by the Great Replacement theory, which is a conspiracy theory that postulates an invisible hand is orchestrating a process wherein white Europeans are being societally co-opted and replaced by Muslim migrants. In the time before his mosque attacks, accounts allegedly operated by Tarrant shared this manifesto to 4chan and other anonymous boards such as 8chan. The most unsettling of Brenton's 4chan-related activity was the fact that he shared a link to the Facebook livestream where he would eventually be showing himself killing people. One such post that was originally submitted to 8chan has been archived. And before his attack, Tarrant would say the following in this post. Well, lads, it's time to stop shitposting and make a real-life effort post. I will carry out an attack against the invaders, and I will even live stream the attack via Facebook. The Facebook link is below. By the time you read this, I should be going live. It's been a long ride, and despite all of your rampant fecklessness and degeneracy, you are all top blokes and the best bunch of cobbers a man could ask for. I have provided links to my writings below. Please do your part by spreading my message, making memes and shitposting as you usually do. If I don't survive the attack, goodbye. God bless, and I will see you all in Valhalla. He then includes about a half-dozen links that include his extremist writings.
This guy.
To the extent of his 4chan and 8chan related activities prior to the attacks, this is all that has really been archived. What's uniquely baffling about the case of Brenton Tarrant in the context of this segment is that Brenton's interactions with 4chan have continued, at least on one occasion, since him being incarcerated. In August of 2019, due to an apparent lapse in correctional facility protocol, Brenton was allowed to send a 6-page handwritten letter from prison that would eventually be posted by the recipient to 4chan. Much of the letter appeared to be innocuous, but an essence of his replacement theory dogma still remains in his writing. Quote, I have no concern for myself, and I only worry for Europe's future. I believe there is a great conflict on the horizon, and unfortunately there will likely be a great amount of bloodshed. I only hope that our people can survive the coming demographic shift. When it was discovered that Brenton was exchanging letters with his apparent fans and they were being published to 4chan, there was a bit of outrage in the public regarding this. Many thought the idea of him being able to share these letters was ridiculous and criticized the corrections department for allowing a convicted terrorist murderer to exchange communications with some of the boards he helped radicalize. In the wake of this discovery, Tarrant's male privileges were briefly suspended and no such correspondences have been discovered since this 2019 incident. What we know for certain is that Brenton will spend the rest of his life behind bars and will never have the opportunity to hurt innocent people again. Unfortunately, though, his actions would go on to inspire other 4chan users. Someone who was in part inspired to kill by Brenton Tarrant was the Buffalo shooter Peyton Gendron. During the early days of the pandemic, Peyton was said to have scoured internet message boards like 4chan, which he has since cited as a source of radicalization. Gendron, much like Tarrant, became fixated with this great replacement theory and even at some point allegedly read and studied some of Tarrant's writings. Peyton was a self-described white supremacist with a deep hatred for Jewish and black people. And if you think that I'm sort of just insinuating that 4chan made this guy more radical, he literally admits that it did in a diary that he kept. Quote, every time I think maybe I shouldn't commit an attack, I spend 5 minutes on pole, then my motivation returns, unquote. Peyton Gendron had somewhat of an interest in the writings of Brendan Tarrant and even felt somewhat inspired by his killings and wanted to do a killing spree of his own. Peyton began to come up with ideas of how he wanted to perpetrate this shooting with the intent of targeting black people in particular. Peyton would attack a Buffalo grocery store with an onslaught of ammo and weapons while also live streaming himself doing so on Twitch starting at about 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Peyton Gendron's racially motivated attack at this grocery store would go on to kill 10 black people. There's even a really disturbing moment in this scene, aside from all of the bloodshed, where he like points a gun at a white guy and apologizes to him as it's like he would never harm another white person or something. It's just really fucked up.
I think I remember this.
And you really can see the motivation that Peyton Gendron had from Tarrant's attack. You know, the live streaming element of it, the racially motivated element of it. The guy spent a lot of time being radicalized by 4chan and Tarrant's sort of path that he laid out on that website. While many initially suspected that Gendron had ended his own life after the shootings, he was actually arrested alive. In June of 2022, Peyton would be indicted with a litany of charges by grand jury and would plead not guilty to all of them. He was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder as a hate crime, 10 counts of second-degree murder as a hate crime, and 3 counts of second-degree attempted murder as a hate crime. One count of second-degree criminal possession of a weapon was added as well. And on top of all of this, he got 26 additional federal charges as well. On November 28th of 2022, Peyton would plead guilty to 15 state-level counts, 10 counts of first-degree murder, and 3 counts of attempted murder motivated by hatred, a criminal possession charge, and domestic terrorism motivated by hatred charge. Now facing serious prison time, in February of 2023, Gendron would actually apologize to the family of the victims in court, the apology falling on deaf ears as he was shortly after physically attacked.
You have made me sick. You got my family crying. I miss my sister every day. I live 3 doors down from Kat. I talk to Kat 4 times a day. My brother Ward goes up there and sit in the park where Kat likes to be. My son called Kat triple black because she was so proud of her heritage. My nephew said Kat was a saint among sinners. My sister Catherine Nasty was a great person. We love our kids. We never go in no neighborhoods and take people out. Don't do it.
Gendron would go on to receive 10 concurrent life sentences without the possibility of parole.
Mr. Gendron, please stand. There is no place for you or your ignorant, hateful, and evil ideologies in a civilized society. There can be no mercy for you, no understanding, no second chances. The damage you have caused is too great, and the people you have hurt are too valuable to this community.
Get rid of him.
You will never see the light of day as a free man ever again.
And this is without his federal charges even being completely processed at this point. It's still possible that Peyton could get the death penalty. So I wanted to tell the stories of Peyton Gendron and Brendan Tarrant sort of back to back as they're sort of tangentially related.
As he deserved, though, gang.
This next story is one of the earlier 4chaners that had been radicalized to commit a killing. Somebody that was inspired by the acts of Elliot Rodger that would go on to do their own sort of incel-inspired killing spree. Before becoming a killer, Alec Minassian was described as a quiet and reserved individual and didn't seem to possess any overtly antisocial traits. However, deep down the man felt immense turmoil. This turmoil coming from the fact that he seemingly couldn't get a girlfriend or find romantic partnership. He was an incel. Apparently experiencing some sort of crisis due to being frequently rejected by women, Alec would frequent 4chan to express his woes regarding this matter. And when notorious incel killer Elliot Rodger went on to commit the infamous Isla Vista murders, well, this was a big source of inspiration for Alec, and he would sound off in support of Elliot's martyrdom for incels on 4chan. Alec would credit Elliot Rodger as the founding father of the incel movement, and he wished to continue his work.
It was Elliot Rodger who was the father.
Basically, the founding forefather of the entire movement.
Right.
From Alec's point of view, the incels hoped to overthrow the Chads and Stacys of the world so that women would be forced to give them attention.
So explain to me this movement. What's this movement about?
It's basically
What?
It's basically a movement of angry incels, such as myself, who are unable to get laid. Therefore, we want to overthrow the Chads, which would force the Stacys to be forced to reproduce with the incels.
In March of 2018, Alec began to hatch a plan to get revenge for the incels against society. His plan being to sacrifice his own life to kill Chads and Stacys. On April 23rd of 2018, Alec Minassian would rent a Ryder van and go on a killing spree around the Toronto area. At 1:25 p.m., the first 911 call related to his activities was made. This call revealing that Alec Minassian was taking this Ryder van around town and striking innocent pedestrians with it in attempts to kill them. Alec's van would eventually be stopped by police at Yonge and Shepherd Street, where he would there be detained. Sadly, though, Alec's rampage had taken the lives of 11 innocent people, all killed being ran over by his van. While being interrogated by the police, Alec said that the only reason that he stopped his attack was because some liquid had gotten on his windshield.
Then what happened?
Some people get knocked out of the way, some people roll over the top of the van. I continue doing that until
bro, you psychotic, bro. You crazy,
in fact,
bro.
actually, to be honest, the only reason I stopped my attack was because someone's drink got splashed on my windshield, and I was worried that I would crash the van anyway, so I decided, okay, now I wanted to do more, but I've kind of been foiled by a lack of visibility.
Alec would initially be charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder and 13 counts of attempted murder. An additional first-degree murder charge would be issued after an individual in the hospital passed away from injuries caused by him. In 2021, Alec Minassian was found guilty of all charges, and on June 13th of 2022, he was sentenced to serve life in prison with no chance of parole. Many often like to understate the connection with 4chan and mass killers.
That's straight madness.
And yes, I totally realize like 4chan
madness.
is not this overarching fucking insane place where if you go there, you're literally a Nazi. But let's face it, there is somewhat of a correlation with 4chan, 8chan, and mass killers. And some of these guys got their starts with radicalization on these boards. So that is the end of the 4chan mass killers in prison segment. Now we get to what's likely the darkest story to ever unfold on 4chan. It was a horrific and at the time unprecedented act involving a murderer sharing photos of his victim to the internet moments after committing his killing. This is the story of David KCK and the 2014 murder of his then girlfriend, Amberlynn Coplin. This story begins with 33-year-old Washington man, David Michael KCK. David was a man with a troubled past and a storied criminal record. A convicted felon with a long history of violence, KCK was said to have had several abusive relationships with women throughout his life. And this pattern continued when he entered a romantic partnership with 30-year-old Amber Coplin. At the time of the two meeting, Coplin was a single mother of 5 children, and she had recently gone through a divorce. While the father of her children contributed greatly to the raising of these kids, being a single mother was difficult for Amber.
I don't know what
and it
you
was in
want.
this tumultuous life state that she began her relationship with David KCK. Described as a man with superficial charm, KCK seemed a suitable partner initially, but became abusive not long after Amber had moved in with him. His vices looming heavily over the couple's relationship and negatively affecting Amber despite her unwavering dedication to the man. An incident that is exemplary of this is a situation that took place in 2012 where David had gotten into a drunken car accident. And when police arrived, Amber tried to take the blame for the crash to protect David from a DUI. Despite her efforts to protect the drunken man, David would be taken to jail for a DUI, and Amber would, of course, bail him out. Due to his criminal past, David was fearing future prosecution in relation to this DUI charge, given that he already had a history of this stuff. So after he got bailed out of jail for this, he decided that the best course of action was to flee the state of Washington. with Amber. Yes, David convinced his girlfriend to come with him, and the two up and left Washington State, with KCK intending to hide from the court system. During this time away, Amber stopped answering her phone and communicating with her family members, which ultimately resulted in concerned relatives filing a missing persons report. Sometime later, Amber was found with KCK by a police deputy in the state of Arizona, and the family was told that she was completely fine and wasn't being held against her will. The woman at this time very much so entranced in the spell cast by her abusive boyfriend. For those that knew Amber, this running away to Arizona incident raised red flags, and those close to her became weary of David and felt that he was a danger to her safety. And to be honest, when you fully get a grasp of David's abusive and criminal history, this concern is certainly warranted. Long before meeting Amber, Daniel had once been arrested for making violent threats and for committing assault against family members with an axe. When he was arrested for this incident, while in the back of the arresting policeman's squad car, David allegedly proceeded to bash out a window with his head. Previous romantic partners have also spoke out on their abusive experiences with David, such as one woman who had completely cut ties with him due to his drinking and violent temper, and this seemed to be a pattern throughout his adult life. And sadly, Amber was not spared from these violent tendencies. At some point during their relationship, Amber would confess to a friend that David had once punched her in the face and knocked her unconscious. She even confided that David had once attempted to drown her. In some instances, these acts of violence were so brutal that it even swayed the unwavering devotion that Amber had for her partner. An incident like this would occur in 2014 that resulted in the two breaking up in March of that year, with David replacing Amber with another girlfriend soon after, who he would also physically abuse. This fling of a relationship only lasted several months. And after this brief time away from Amber, he would indeed come back to her, and she would reluctantly get back together with David. And not long after reuniting, David's true colors revealed themselves once more. His abusive tendencies amplified. Around this time, David was reportedly drinking half a gallon of vodka a day and argued near constantly with Amber, even in front of her children. But these verbal altercations would pale in comparison to the unspeakable act that David committed against Amber in November of 2014. Amber and David were said to have gotten in a heated exchange, this altercation resulting in the incensed and drunken David verbally accosting his girlfriend yet again. And it seemed like on this particular night, Amber had finally had enough of the abuse. She decided that she was going to set a boundary for this evening, that boundary being that if you're going to be abusive and yelling at me, I don't want to be around you, so you need to sleep in a different room. Seemingly enraged by this notion, murderous thoughts began to flood David's head upon hearing this boundary request. And later in the evening, David KCK became violent. This violence taking the form of an attack involving him strangling Amber to death. After committing his deed and witnessing the lifeless body of his girlfriend lying on the ground, one might hope for an ounce of remorse to bubble up in this man's blackened soul. But David had no such remorse. Rather, actions perpetrated by the man after his killing suggest that he was proud of what he had done. After strangling the woman he had been dating for over 2 years, he desecrated her body, writing words and drawing all over her. KCK then took photos of the deceased woman's naked body and posted the gruesome imagery to 4chan for all in the community to see. These horrifying photos were attached with a message that read, quote, "It's way harder to strangle someone to death than it looks on the movies." Naturally, 4chan users were shocked by these photos, and they asked the uploader questions, and some even suggested that they were fake. But David allegedly responded with this, quote, "Check the news for Port Orchard, Washington in a few hours. Her son will be home from school soon. He'll find her, then call the cops. I just wanted to share the pics before they find me." When these photos were posted to 4chan, it was a sort of all hands on deck moment from the community, and it wouldn't be long before the photography was spreading all over the internet. Following the harrowing post to 4chan, the images would be shared to law enforcement as well by board members, and police would quickly begin work in tracking down the individual responsible for the grisly submission. And later in the evening, while police were trying to track down this killer, David would continuously go onto this 4chan thread and update his status and just share random thoughts about his murder. Unfortunately, though, archives of these comments have been lost to time. What happens next is the discovery of Amber Copland's body. Amber's body was discovered on the evening of November 4th by her own son, who would call police after finding it. Police would search the residence and David was nowhere to be found, but the man did leave behind a picture with words scribbled on it relating to his killing. The picture left at the crime scene said, quote, "She killed me first." And police noticed on Amber's driver's license it appeared that David had written the word "dead" on it. With Amber's body discovered, police now had to find David the killer. Police were able to track David down thanks to text messages that he had sent to a friend sometime after the killing. These text messages saying, quote, "Shit is all fucked now. You'll see me in the news." And quote, "There'll be no more me, ever. You'll read about it. That's all." Metadata from these messages indicated that he was still in the Pacific Northwest and hadn't tried to flee to the other side of the country. And around this time, warrants were issued for his arrest and police were put on notice. And it wouldn't be long before police officers spotted his vehicle in Portland, Oregon. When officers attempted to pull him over, David sped away and a police chase ensued, one involving David swerving and weaving through oncoming traffic. Police would catch up to David sometime later, and on November 5th of 2014, KCK would peacefully surrender to the Wilsonville, Oregon police and was taken into custody without incident. He was then charged with the second-degree murder of his girlfriend, Amberlynn Copland. And in the wake of these charges, it wouldn't be long before investigators discovered the messages that had been posted to 4chan, and this all of a sudden became a remarkable, unprecedented case. It became a national news story, as this was really the first time that a murder had been connected not only to 4chan, but that a murderer had posted images of his victim just moments after killing them to the internet. Many wondered why someone would do something like this. Many psychologists at the time speculated that David did this as a final act of cruelty to Amber and her loved ones, as killing her is already terrible enough, but then sharing her photos to the world is just another level of dark and demented humiliation added to this crime. A criminal psychologist says, quote, "It's a last way to humiliate her, to take away her dignity. That's just cruel." After a long trial, several years later in April of 2017, David KCK would be convicted of first-degree murder by a jury, and in May of 2017, he was sentenced to serve 82 years in prison. During court hearings, David reflected on his crime. Quote, "The only thing I can say is, I am sorry, and I will never forgive myself." David KCK is probably the most notorious criminal in 4chan history. And sadly, the murder of Amber Copland will go down as one of the darkest tales to ever take place on the site. And well, you've made it to the end. Let me know what you guys thought about this video down below in the comment section, and let me know who or what you want me to talk about next. I want to give a major shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys. Wavy Web Surf out. Peace.
Alright, gang. So we see them videos. Yo, some of those people was crazy, bro. What? And all of them were on 4chan. Bro, what's 4chan breeding? I don't even know what's 4chan. I've never been on that. I mean, I've heard about it, obviously. But everything I've heard about 4chan is nuts, bro. Everybody I've heard on the show, or not show, website, whoever used it, the story's just nuts, bro. Thanks for watching today's video. Like I said, from now on, I'm gonna just keep doing my thing, whatever it is I gotta do. So if I'm not actively creating art for you, that's not gonna be the main thing. I'm gonna just keep doing what I'm doing and putting up drawings or videos of me making art to the side, like I've been doing so far. But I'll be actively working on whatever art, design, or project that I'm doing right here in front of me to utilize my time as best as possible. And I feel like if I could teach anything to anybody, you should try doing the same. It's one thing to read a book or put on an audio book or something and expand your knowledge, But it's also another thing to put on that audiobook and run through your emails or go through your to-do list. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to utilize my time as best as possible so I could reach as far as possible in life as fast as possible, so that I have enough time to enjoy whatever I achieve. You feel me? And then I'm gonna start giving you some more original content, like the drawing videos I'm working on how to draw stuff, you know, because like the other day I was working on this, how to draw the Straw Hat cast, you know, from One Piece. I'm trying to fight some monetization stuff, not monetization, some copyright stuff to get those videos up to you. But if I do get them, it's probably gonna be some members only stuff, you know, so you could see like almost behind the scenes. I still gotta speed up some stuff and cut up a lot of stuff to beat the copyright, you know, or for it to fall under fair use. So I'm gonna put those up as members only so you could see like kind of behind the scenes. And then I'm gonna do just like a recap video almost with a voiceover, and just mash all the videos together, cut them up even more, remove all the sound from One Piece, just me describing or explaining what it is I'm doing. Then I'm gonna put that out on YouTube for everybody. You know what I mean? So I hit members. Since I hit members, I'm gonna start sectioning off some of my stuff for members only. So join my members and you'll get to see those. And then I'm gonna do the other stuff for all of YouTube, and more stuff like this, you know, like just basic reaction stuff for any and everybody to see. But if you follow me for my art, then I gotta start making art videos solely for you. So until then, I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. All right, bye everybody, and have a great day.